Hi everybody, thanks for joining my channel today. Welcome to the Sanjana Fitness Hatha Yoga channel. My name is Sam. Today's yoga flow will be focused just on simple hip opening exercises, big focus on the physical body in the hips. Feel free to bring any mantra to the practice that suits your practice, maybe something around self-care or self-love. We'll be talking a little bit about that today. Also feel free to bring a pillow, a bolster, or a block to make it your own. Always make the practice your own. Also, if you want to check out our other videos, join the class live for free every Sunday. It is virtual. You can find that information at sanjanafitness.com. Good luck, and I will meet you on your back when you're ready. Okay, so we'll get started on our backs. You can bring a pillow if you need for your neck or your head. And we can just drop in either in Shavasana, corpse pose, or any other resting pose here on your back that feels good for you. You can do the reclined bound angled pose. You could even drop in with knees to chest if you want to. Whatever pose you choose, we'll start to settle in and just notice how you feel today. Checking in with the physical body, the intellectual body, the emotional body, and the spiritual body. And when we drop in these opening meditations, you're really just trying to observe, notice, and start to practice that observation without attachment, without judgment. Just taking stock, taking inventory of what's going on with you, and connecting with the breath. So we'll be focused on hip opening exercises today, poses that work the internal and external rotation at the hip and all of the musculature that supports the hips. So that's the body part we'll be focusing on, or the parts of the body we'll be focusing on. But if you want to bring a mantra to today's practice, you can make something general like taking care of my body and mind makes me more resilient in my community. Or I can't fill up anyone else's cup unless my cup is full. If you're in Shavasana or some other asana on your back, let's remove that pillow when you're ready, if you're using one. And let's just start by bringing the knees to the chest. Just checking in with the back, creating some compression for the hip flexors, noticing what you feel and where. Maybe just rocking gently side to side, or finding stillness. Whatever helps you connect more deeply with the body and put your mind's eye where you feel sensations. When you feel good about that, let's drop the left foot to the floor, sole of the left foot planted on the floor. And we'll cross that right ankle over the left knee for our little hip opening warm-up poses. So you can just press that knee open using just your knee to begin with. And then maybe bringing the fingertips to the inside edge of that right thigh, just to gently guide it. We're never forcing anything in yoga, just meeting the body where it is, which will be different every day. And just giving the body what it needs. When you're ready, you can kick that left foot up off the mat And either just keep it at a bent at a 90 degree with your fingers interlaced behind your left thigh, pressing that right elbow into the right thigh, or maybe extending through the left knee, sending the heel toward the ceiling. And same thing here, you can find stillness and just notice what you're feeling, or you can rock gently side to side. Remember, this practice is yours, so be curious, listen to your body and make it your own. And if you want a little more sensation here, you can bend into that left knee, interlace the fingers in front of the left shin. Make sure the head and shoulders are in contact with the mat or pulling downward toward the mat. You're just pulling that left knee in toward the face, very gently, maybe pressing that right elbow into the inside of the right thigh. So again, notice what you feel and where. We're going to stretch through, move through all of the musculature and the connective tissue that supports the hips. So right now you might be feeling something in the glute or elsewhere. Just notice. Take your time here. And when you feel satisfied, you can drop that left foot back to the mat, unravel, and we'll take it to the second side. So to do that, we'll also bring the sole of the right foot to the mat. We'll cross that left ankle over that right knee and just start to press that left knee open using your muscles, not your hands. As you do that, practice bringing your mind's eye to the point where you feel sensations in the body or the points. And observing those sensations without getting overwhelmed, without getting attached, just noticing. Feel free to press in with the fingertips when you're ready. Go ahead and progress at your own pace. Listen to your body, explore, be curious. Kick that right foot off the mat when you're ready and interlace the fingers behind that right thigh, either keeping that right knee bent or extending fully through that right knee, sending the heel toward the ceiling. Left elbows on the inside edge of the left thigh. And we're just gently pulling that knee, that thigh in toward the face. Bending into the elbows. If you did it on the first side, you might bend into that right knee, interlace the fingers in front of that right shin, bring the head and the shoulders back to the mat. And same thing here, you can rock gently left to right. You can find stillness, or you can slightly flex the elbows to bring that right knee a little closer toward the face. Just checking in with what you're feeling and where. Spend as much time as you'd like here. Enjoy the sensations that you're feeling. If it's way too intense, you just back down to one of the earlier progressions of this pose. Like just keeping your fingers interlaced behind your thigh, for example. When you're ready to come out, do so mindfully. We'll release that right foot back to the mat, unravel with the left, and maybe just walk the feet wide and let the knees fall in toward one another. And then we'll just do a little massage on the outer hip, just letting the knees fall to the right and then to the left. We'll go through that a couple times. And then when you're ready, we'll come up to sitting. You can get there however you get there. I like to roll along the spine by kicking my heels up, coming into my cross-legged seat, just because it's fun, but you can do whatever you want to get there. I'm gonna turn to face you just so you can see me, but find that comfortable cross-legged seat. If you need to grab your pillow for under the hips, feel free to do that. Let's just notice which shin is in front here. Just notice. And then we're gonna find our nice long posture, getting long through the spine, tucking the chin a little bit. Long line from the top of your head to the tip of your tailbone, sits bones connecting to the mat. You might take a mudra with your fingers if that's part of your practice, or maybe just rest your hands in your lap for a moment. We just want to take this time to really survey, notice, and observe the posture. Check in with those micro movements that help the breath move with ease in and out of the body. So you might pull the shoulders back, tuck the chin, push your chest up. Just checking in here. And when you're ready, let's release the hands. Just rest them on the mat on the outsides of the hips. We're gonna sync up with our breath. So your breathing rhythm is different from mine. So sync up with your inhales and exhales. And on our next inhale, we're just gonna bring the hands up together toward the ceiling. They don't need to touch, just reaching, getting really long, trying to take up space. Maybe pretend like you're climbing a ladder or a vine, pulling yourself up, getting longer. And when you're fully extended, we'll hinge at the hips, palms come down to the floor. Relaxing through the head, the neck, the shoulders, maybe shake out your hair if it feels good, and just take a second here. Check in with the breath. If your eyes are closed, gently bat them open and take a look at which shin is in front in your cross-legged seat. Whichever shin is in front, we're gonna walk the fingertips in that direction. So my right shin is in front, I'm gonna walk my hands over to the right side, and then same thing, melt it down here at my range of motion, relaxing through the head and neck, noticing what I feel and where. Just observing and being curious in the body. Try to keep that left hip anchored to the mat. Really stretching through the side body, those lower back muscles and connective tissues that support or are connected to the hips. If you're able to keep that left hip anchored, you might walk the left fingertips a little bit further just to connect a little more deeply with the side body. Or make this nice and passive, whatever you want. Take your time here if it feels good. Otherwise, when you're ready, we'll walk the fingertips back through center and over to that second side. In my case, it's the left knee. Once there, melt it down, relax through the head and neck and the shoulders. Make it as passive or as active as you'd like. Pulling that right knee open, connecting the right hip to the mat. And maybe walking those right fingertips a little bit further if you're looking for a little deeper sensation. One side of the body might be very different than the other, so no need to be alarmed. Just give yourself that grace. Observe, notice what you feel. And when you're satisfied, we'll walk the hands back through center. Palms on the floor. We're going to plant the sits bones, plant the tailbone. Make sure you feel that connection to the earth. We're going to anchor down through that to slowly, gently, mindfully curl back up to sitting, like you're moving through water or something more fun like Jello. As you curl all the way back up to that seated posture, let's check in again with the spinal alignment, the chest, the shoulders, tuck the chin. And I would challenge you to check in with your spinal alignment at different points throughout the day and just your posture in general. I would say my big shortcoming is I tend to slump my shoulders. So let's check in there. Support the body as it's asking for. We will release our hands back to the outer edges of the hips again. We're gonna switch sides here, but first we're gonna switch shins. So whatever shin is in front, you're gonna tuck that one in, put the other one in front, just for symmetry. Might feel very awkward if it's not your dominant leg, no big deal. And then syncing up with the breath once again, check in with that spinal alignment. On your next inhale, raise the hands up toward the ceiling, toward one another, getting really long. Reach up a little higher. Take up more space, creating length in the spine, decompressing. And on your next exhale, we'll hinge at the hips, bringing the palms down to the floor, keeping those sits bones planted on the mat or the earth. Take a second here, check in. Take a look at your shin in front, whichever one is in front. We're gonna walk the fingers that way first. So I'm going to my left side first this time. And then same thing here, melt down the head and the heart, finding the edge of your range of motion on that side. Checking in with the side body, making sure that right hip is nice and anchored. Maybe walking the right fingertips a little bit further away. And just get some nice deep inhales all the way down through the side body and low back into that right hip. Move at your own pace, connect with the breath. When you're ready, you can switch to that second side by lifting the head, the neck, the shoulders, pressing into the fingertips, and walking them over to the second side. In my case, that's the right. Melt it down over that right knee. Find your edge of your range of motion. Make it as passive or as active as you'd like. It's your practice. Notice what you feel without getting overwhelmed. Try to stay present in those sensations. Just start envisioning this space that you've created for yourself with love and acceptance. Let's make the most of this space today, whatever that means to you. When you feel good about it, we'll walk the fingertips back through center. And if you can, maybe just come down onto the forearms and interlace the fingers. We're just going to practice anchoring the hips to the mat. Noticing what you feel and where. And if this is totally inaccessible to you, you can also just put the palms on the mat, bend into the elbows, and practice folding as far forward as you can. When you're ready to come out, plant the sits bones, plant the tailbone. We'll slowly curl back up, finding that nice long spine once again. And then let's try a little yin yoga dragonfly pose here. So we're gonna get into the abductors, adductors, just by extending the legs fully. We're gonna come into like a wide-legged seat. So sending your left foot to the left and your right foot to the right, as wide as is comfortable for you. If this is very uncomfortable right now, bring the feet a little closer together. So we're gonna do another little forward fold here. So it might be really intense. Just adjust according to your body, and don't forget to incorporate your breath. So once you're set up here in this wide-legged seat, getting long through the spine, let's do the same thing, bringing the hands to the outside edges of the hips. We'll sync up with the breath, and on our next inhale, lift the hands toward the ceiling and toward each other, getting really long, taking up space, and then bringing the palms toward the floor, hinging at the hips. We'll come down to the forearms, or maybe just curling through the upper back, bringing the palms to the floor, whatever is accessible to you. If you want to try a block, a pillow, or a prop, feel free. I like to come down to the forearms in this pose, but I also like to keep my ankles flexed so the toes are toward the ceiling. And because of a little bit of weakness in the hips, my toes will sometimes roll inward, like internal rotation. So if that's your situation, I sometimes like to just gently make a little wall with my hands and prevent my toes from curling inward. And you might feel a lot more engagement in the inner thigh when you do that. You can also make this nice and passive just by hugging your pillow, coming into that seated fold. Remember, it's your practice. Make it your own. Reconnect with your breath and your mantra if you have one. Stay here as long as you'd like. When you're ready to come out of it, we'll curl up just like we did in the other fold. Let's make sure the toes are staying pointed toward the ceiling the whole time. You have integrity in the pose. Coming all the way up, roll the shoulders back. And then we're going to come forward onto all fours. I think you probably know what's coming next. So get there however you'd like to get there. Center yourself on your mat. And of course, we'll start off here with a little bit of cat-cow and its variations. So if you know what that means, take it from here. Otherwise, palms are under the shoulders, knees are under the hips. You're on the shins and the tops of the feet. We're going to sync up with our breath, and on our inhale, we're going to drop the belly, tilt the pelvis, lift the gaze, tail to the ceiling. And on our exhales, we'll press into the heel of our palms, arching through the upper back, curling the low ribs inward. And then just sync up with your breath. Move at your own pace, listen to your body. And as always, feel free to get creative. Make it your own. If your hips are asking for extra love, you might draw big circles with the hips, sending them toward the heels and toward the left side and right side of the mat. If your spine is aching for you to release some potential energy and move in different ways, then you might just pretend you're on the inside of a Mario tube or inside of a barrel and just press your ribs to meet every side. So basically just drawing circles with the ribs, bending into the elbows, exploring the articulation of the spine, just allowing the body to move in any way that it's asking you to. Take your time here, enjoy it. Remember, you created this space for yourself. You are in control of this practice. Make it your own. And when you feel good about it, we'll come back through center, just to that neutral spine, that tabletop position, palms under the shoulders, knees under the hips. And I want to start just with by lubricating the hip joint itself. We'll do that by bringing the right knee a little bit in toward the center. We're going to lift the left knee and just draw big circles with the knee, or whatever circle size suits your body today. Just opening that knee up. Basically what you're doing when you do this, especially before exercise, is you're just lubricating the joint with synovial fluid by moving it through its full range of motion. Feel free to reverse that circle if it feels good. Just checking in everywhere with that joint. So using it in every way that it can be used right now, every plane of movement. All right, let's bring that circle back to the forward direction if you were going backwards. And we're doing that because on your next rotation, we're going to bring that left foot to the outside edge of the left hand and just let the toes spill off the mat a little bit. From here, let's walk that right knee back. We're just getting into both hips here. You can just rest here. This is lizard pose. You can also incorporate props here if you want to come down onto a prop or come down onto your elbows, whatever is accessible to you. Take any variation that feels right in your body today. And just check in there. What do you feel? Try to be able to articulate those sensations to yourself or put your mind's eye there. To try to understand what you're feeling and where. Not just in that left hip, but also in the right hip, where you're getting some lengthening, some elongation through the right hip flexors. Feel free to explore and make it your own. Like I said, if you want to put your left hand on the inside edge of that left knee, left thigh and press it open, you can also do that. Body will tell you what it needs. All right, from here, let's walk this lizard into a pigeon pose or pigeon variation. So we can bend into that right knee just to kind of bring your hips back a little bit if there's a lot of strain there in the front of the right hip. And we're just going to heel toe that left foot all the way across the mat to the right side. Once she's there, you can open up that left knee, come down to the hips. And we'll find the upright version of this pose before we fold forward. Your shin, you want to work toward opening that degree of flexion in the knee so that your shin is ultimately eventually parallel with the top edge of your mat. If that's way too intense right now, bring that heel in closer to the body, bend that knee a little bit more, and find a good upright version of this pose before we fold at the hips. Make sure you feel symmetrical. You're not slumping over to that left side. Nice integrity through the spine here. Then we'll walk our hands forward, folding at the hips, maybe coming onto bringing the forehead to stacked fists or stacked palms. Checking in again, make sure you're not rolling to one side or the other. Reconnect with the breath. Notice what you feel and where. Take this time just to turn inward. Remember your mantra. Reconnect with the breath. Breathing all the way into that left hip. Quieting the mind chatter, noticing if you get distracted and coming back to the breath. Take your time here. Spend as much time on this side as you'd like. If you are experiencing way too much intensity in this pose, just try the upright version for now. We say that people tend to store trauma in the hips. So if you're having an emotional response to this pose that you didn't expect, just know that that's normal. Reconnect with the breath. When you're ready, we'll gently press up out of this pose by opening up the palms, bringing the palms to the mat under the shoulders, extending through the elbows. Let's come back up to the seated version of this before we unwrap it. Take a moment here, check in, notice if anything's different. And when you're ready to come out, we'll bend into that right knee. We'll bring it around to the front for that cross-legged seat, and then we'll just roll forward onto all fours to do the same thing on the second side. So recenter yourself if you need to. Take any other easy organic movement you need before we come back into that tabletop position. Palms under the shoulders, knees under the hips. And once again, we're just going to start by bringing that left knee in somewhere toward the midline, the center of the mat, lifting that right knee to draw some big circles. So again, you're just lubricating that joint, preparing her for movement. And for that little longer hold. Feel free to reverse that circle and explore if it feels good. Just checking in. And then we'll bring that circle in the forward direction when you're ready. Because next we're going to bring that right foot to the outside edge of that right hand, planting it on the edge of the mat with toes spilling off the mat. So from here we'll walk that left knee back a little bit further to wherever is comfortable for you. And here you are in your lizard pose variation. So just stay here if that feels good. If you're getting engagement in both hips. If not, you can grab your pillow, bolster, or block, come down onto the forearms, elbows there. You can also come down to the elbows on the mat if it's accessible to you, but do not force this pose. You don't need to progress through the asanas. You can just take whatever version of it works for your body. Reconnecting with the breath. Stretching through the front of that left hip. Feeling that nice compression in the right. Feel free to bring your right hand to the inside edge of that right knee and just press it open if it feels good. Maybe look over your right shoulder. Checking in here. Take as much time as you want in this pose. If it feels really great, just stay there for a while longer. Connect with the breath, close your eyes if it feels good. Otherwise, we're gonna walk that right foot into pigeon pose on the second side. So to do that, we'll heel toe that right foot all the way over to the left side of the mat. And then come down onto the hips with that opening in the right knee. And I'm gonna pull my heel way in because that open sensation is way too intense for me, especially on the right side. So feel free to adjust. And remember that one side might be very different from the other. That's totally normal. Checking in here, making sure you're not falling or rolling over to the right. You have good symmetry in your pose. You feel connected to the mat. Nice and open through the chest, shoulders back, long spine. Let's take a nice deep inhale here. And on your exhale, we'll hinge at the hips, folding forward over that right knee, maybe coming onto stacked fists or stacked palms or a yoga block. Or maybe just bending into the elbows if that's what's accessible to you today. Checking in there. Taking this time to turn inward in this safe space that you've created for yourself. Taking this time to allow ourselves to quiet the mind, connect with the body, connect with the breath. Noticing what you feel and where without getting overwhelmed, without being judgmental, and without attachment. Remember that the physical body is a mass of tissues that's going to perform and act differently every day. So give yourself a little grace for that, especially if you have been practicing a lot, or you expect your shape to look different. Try to let go of that. Try to let go of those expectations and just be present in the body. Take your time in this pose, connecting with the breath. When you're ready to come out, and only when you're ready, bring the palms under the shoulders once again. Slowly press up to that upright version of this pose. Bring that, bend into that left knee, bring it all the way around for your cross-legged seat. And once again, we'll roll forward onto all fours. We're gonna come into a little froggy pose. So we'll take a wide-legged stance with the knees. So your knees are under the hips, but maybe just a little bit wider than the hips. Okay, and then let's point the feet away from one another. So you may need to widen your knees more to do that. And then we're just gonna come down onto the forearms here. And you can just stay here like this. If it feels good, you can also press back a little bit more. If that feels good, just explore your range, checking in with the hips again. So you're at 90 degrees at both ankles, toes pointed in opposite direction. Coming to the inside edge of both knees. Checking in with the adductors, abductors. When you feel satisfied there, we'll walk the knees in a little bit closer together, but not touching. So the knees will be just about as wide as the yoga mat or a little narrower. We'll bring the big toes in to touch, send the hips back toward the heels, and then walk the hands forward, coming onto the forehead for your extended child's pose. Take your time here. This will kick off our cool down for the practice. Settle into some rich, deep breaths. Turn inward, close your eyes if it feels good. Make it nice and passive here, just resting on the forehead. Take a few more quiet, deep breaths in this pose. Remember your mantra or this beautiful bubble of self-care, self-love that you've created for this practice. When you're ready to come out, we'll do so gently and slowly with love, connecting our fingertips to the mat, pressing into them and walking the hands up toward the body. Let's bring the knees together. Just sit on the heels. We'll just do a little spinal twist to release any remaining potential energy there. By bringing that left hand behind you, planting the fingertips or the palm, whatever is accessible. Pulling that left shoulder open, maybe looking back over the left shoulder. Right hand is on the outside edge of the left knee or left thigh, wherever is comfortable. Take a couple deep breaths there. Switch to that other side when you're ready. Nice and gently, this time right fingertips plant behind us, sit up, lift, and twist, pulling that right shoulder open. Left hand comes to the outside edge of the right thigh. Release that gently when you're ready. And we're gonna just come into a sitting position. So just bringing the hips to the mat, bringing the soles of the feet in front of you. Let's just put the hands back behind you wherever is comfortable. We're just gonna lean back a little bit here, let the knees fall to the right and to the left. Just massaging through that outer hip. And from here we can come into the seated version of the poses, the stretches that we opened with. So from this seated position, you can cross that left ankle over the right knee. Just press that left knee open a little bit. And we don't need to go through a full sequence here because we've already warmed up and stretched through the hips in this way. But I just want to show you this variation if it's more accessible. And then same thing, if you want to press into that knee, you can, just nice and gently. And we can do the same thing on the second side. Unraveling that left knee, crossing the right ankle over the left. Feel free to use your hand to adjust if you need to, no shame in that. Get comfortable on the palms and just press that right knee open. When you feel good about it, release that right foot back to the mat. We'll center ourselves on the mat and just roll back onto our backs, knees toward the chest. Maybe wrapping your arms around them, rocking gently left to right if it feels good. Or just finding stillness there. And then from this knees to chest pose, we're going to anchor the upper body by creating a T shape with the arms. Keep the knees where they are. And then we will let that stack of knees, hips, and ankles roll all the way over to the left. Staying nice and anchored with the T shape in the upper body, pulling that right shoulder toward the mat or toward the earth. Maybe resting that left hand on the outside edge of the right thigh. And then let's flip that right palm so the back of the hand is on the floor, and keeping the back of the hand in contact with the floor, we're going to slide the hand up and overhead like you're raising your hand in class. And this pose variation just helps us get a little bit deeper into those connective supporting muscles in the low back that also come through the hips. So you got a lot going on in the body here, but just observe, breathe, and enjoy. When you're ready to switch sides, let's start by putting the arms back in that T shape, palms downward. We'll press into the palms from here, and using your core strength, creating that intra-abdominal pressure, we'll rotate the stack of ankles, knees, and hips back through the center and over to the right side, bringing them all the way down to the mat and making sure that left shoulder stays pinned to the mat. Maybe bringing that right hand to the outside edge of the left thigh if it feels good. Settling in here. Maybe flipping that left palm so it's facing the ceiling and keeping the back of the left hand in contact with the floor, sliding that hand all the way up overhead like you're raising your hand in class. Notice what you feel and where. Enjoy some deep breaths all the way down the side body into the hips. Take your time here, stay here as long as you'd like. When you're ready to come out of it, you start by making that T shape with the arms and upper body. And just rolling the knees, hips, and ankles back through center. I'm going to come into a reclined bound angle here as my final resting pose before Shavasana. So you can join me in that or take any easy organic pose from this position that you'd like. So for reclined bound angle, we'll bring the soles of our feet together, let the knees fall apart, and just rest the hands on the body, on the ribs, on the hips, or open the palms toward the ceiling, whatever you like. You can also take a little happy baby or knees to chest or a little banana stretch, whatever you want before Shavasana. Taking this time just to cool down. Remember your mantra if you had one. Remember what brought you to class today. And let that inform your final poses and your final meditation. When you're ready to move into that final meditative posture, we'll extend through the knees, coming into corpse pose. The anatomical position, as we call it in science or biology. Coming into that pose, let's let something go. Sink a little deeper into your mat. Just notice the strength and support of the earth beneath you. encourage you to take 5 or 10 minutes after the practice in Shavasana just to meditate. Yoga, to me, and can be to others, it's meditation through movement. Just helping you quiet the mind, be present. Experience the here and now, right now. Just letting go of memories of the past, internal dialogue, thoughts of the future, worries about tomorrow. Leave all of that behind when you create this space for yourself. When it starts to creep in, just come back to the sound of the breath. Before I close the practice today, I want to do a land acknowledgement. Recognize and honor the Monongahela, Osage, and Erie people that inhabited this land before I did, from where I'm teaching. I encourage you to find out whose indigenous lands you are practicing from, and then to take that extra step to find out how you can support those indigenous folks in their collective struggle for liberation, which is always tied to ours. If it feels right, you can bring your palms together to rest gently at the third eye or the space between the eyebrows or just on the forehead. Or just keep your hands open and listen. We want to recognize that yoga is an ancient spiritual practice coming from the subcontinent of India and Indian culture. So we give them credit for that. We respect that cultural heritage, we honor it, and we recognize that yoga has a lot of different other functions for other peoples of the world, including as a community. I thank you so much for being part of my community today. I hope you got what you needed here today, and I hope to see you again soon. Namaste.